Imagine the temperature is dropping to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There's no heated house to run to, no warm car waiting in the driveway, and definitely no emergency services to call when things go wrong. You're a Stone Age human, and winter is trying its absolute best to kill you. Yet somehow your ancestors didn't just survive these brutal conditions, they thrived in them for hundreds of thousands of years. How did people with nothing but stone tools and animal skins manage to survive nights so cold that modern humans would die within hours? The answer is going to blow your mind, because it reveals just how incredibly tough and clever our ancestors really were. The first thing you need to understand is that Stone Age people weren't just tougher than us, they were built differently, literally. Their bodies had adapted over thousands of generations to handle extreme cold in ways that would seem like superpowers to us today. Stone Age people had metabolisms that could shift gears like a race car engine. When temperatures dropped, their bodies would automatically start burning more calories to generate heat from the inside out. Their muscles were dense and powerful, creating natural furnaces that kept their core temperature stable, even when the air around them could freeze spit before it hit the ground. But here's the really incredible part. They had something called brown fat. Most modern humans lose almost all of their brown fat after childhood, but Stone Age people kept it throughout their lives. Brown fat is like having a built-in space heater. Unlike regular fat that just sits there looking ugly, brown fat burns calories specifically to create heat. When the temperature dropped, their brown fat would kick into overdrive, turning their bodies into walking furnaces. Their hands and feet had better blood circulation too. While your fingers and toes would go numb and useless in extreme cold, theirs stayed warm and functional, and it was the result of a lifetime of exposure to harsh conditions that had trained their circulatory systems to work efficiently even in brutal cold. Now, having a body that could handle cold was just the beginning. The real magic happened when Stone Age people learned to control fire. Stone Age people created sophisticated heating systems using nothing but rocks, wood, and centuries of accumulated knowledge. They would build multiple fires in strategic locations, using the landscape itself to trap and redirect heat. Like if they were sleeping in a cave, they would build fires near the entrance to create a heat barrier that kept warm air in and cold air out. But here's where it gets really clever. They discovered that different types of wood burned in different ways. Some woods burned hot and fast, perfect for cooking food quickly. Others burned slow and steady, ideal for keeping a fire going all night long. They learned to combine different types of wood to create fires that would burn for exactly as long as they needed, without wasting precious fuel. The most ingenious part was their use of heated stones. They would place large rocks near the fire for hours, letting them absorb massive amounts of heat. Then, when it was time to sleep, they would carefully move these superheated stones into their sleeping areas. These stones would radiate warmth for hours, turning their beds into ancient heating pads that kept them warm all night long. Speaking of beds, forget everything you think you know about Stone Age people sleeping on the cold ground.
First, they never slept directly on the ground. The earth sucks heat out of your body faster than you can produce it, which is why sleeping on cold ground can kill you, even if the air temperature isn't that bad. Stone Age people solved this by creating thick barriers between themselves and the ground using layers of animal skins, dried grass, leaves, and anything else that could trap air and provide insulation. But they took it much further than that. They built raised sleeping platforms using logs and stones, lifting themselves completely off the ground to avoid the deadly cold that radiated up from below. These platforms were then covered with multiple layers of the warmest materials they could find, creating beds that were warmer and more comfortable than what many people sleep on today. They also understood that different animals provided different types of insulation. Bear fur was thick and heavy, perfect for the outer layer that faced the wind and cold. Rabbit fur was incredibly soft and light, ideal for the layer closest to their skin. They would layer these different furs like a sophisticated thermal system, trapping warm air between the layers while keeping cold air out. They also discovered that the way you prepare animal skins makes a huge difference in how warm they keep you. Fresh skins are stiff and don't breathe well, but Stone Age people developed techniques for softening and treating skins that made them flexible, breathable, and incredibly warm. They would chew the skins to soften them, rub them with animal fat to make them waterproof, and smoke them to preserve them for months or even years. The most incredible part was how they used body heat as a group. On the coldest nights, entire families would sleep together in carefully arranged groups, sharing body heat and creating warm microclimates that kept everyone alive. But they were smart about how they did this. The strongest, warmest people would sleep on the outside, creating a protective barrier for the children and elderly who couldn't generate as much heat on their own. They would arrange themselves so that everyone's body heat contributed to the group's survival, with no one person having to carry the entire burden of staying warm.
Food played a crucial role in cold weather survival that most people never think about. Your body burns way more calories when it's fighting off extreme cold, which means Stone Age people needed to eat differently in winter than they did in summer. They couldn't just eat whatever they found, they needed specific types of food that would fuel their internal heating systems. Animal fat contains more than twice as many calories per gram as protein or carbohydrates, which means it could keep their internal fires burning longer and hotter. These men would hunt for the fattiest animals they could find and save the fat for the coldest nights when they needed maximum calories to survive. They also learned to eat more frequently in extreme cold. While they might eat once or twice a day in warmer weather, cold nights required constant fuel. They would eat small amounts throughout the night, keeping their metabolisms running hot and their bodies generating heat from the inside out. Alcohol played an interesting role too, though not in the way you might think. While alcohol might make you feel warmer temporarily, it actually makes you lose heat faster by dilating your blood vessels. Stone Age people figured this out and used alcohol strategically. A small amount could help them fall asleep when they were safe in their warm shelters, but they knew better than to drink when they were exposed to real cold. The location of where they slept was just as important as how they slept. Stone Age people were master meteorologists who could read weather patterns and find the warmest possible spots to spend the night. They understood that cold air sinks and warm air rises, so they would look for elevated areas that stayed warmer than the valleys below. Caves were the ultimate cold weather shelters, but not just any cave would do. They needed caves that were deep enough to provide real protection, but not so deep that dangerous animals might be living in them. When caves weren't available, they built their own shelters, using whatever materials they could find. These weren't primitive lean-tos that you might build on a camping trip. They were sophisticated structures, designed by people who understood that a poorly built shelter meant death. They would build frameworks using strong branches, and then cover them with multiple layers of animal skins, creating walls that could block wind and trap heat. The entrance would be carefully designed to keep cold air out while allowing people to enter and exit safely. Some of these shelters were so well built that they could keep the inside temperature 40 or 50 degrees warmer than the outside air. Perhaps the most amazing thing about Stone Age cold weather survival was how they planned ahead. These weren't people who just reacted to cold weather when it arrived. They spent the entire warm season preparing for winter like their lives depended on it, because they did. During summer and fall, they would hunt specific animals whose fur would be thickest and warmest in winter. They would gather and store materials for building fires and shelters, would scout out the best locations for winter camps, and prepare them months in advance, and would preserve food that would give them the calories they needed to fuel their bodies through the coldest nights. This level of planning and preparation is something that modern humans, with all our technology and resources, rarely match. We complain when our heating bill is high, but Stone Age people spent half their lives preparing for winter and the other half surviving it. The psychological aspect of surviving extreme cold was just as important as the physical preparation. Stone Age people lived with the constant knowledge that winter could kill them, which made them incredibly focused and determined when cold weather arrived. They couldn't afford to panic or give up because there was no backup plan. They had to make their survival strategies work or die trying. They also understood the power of community and shared responsibility. Everyone in the group had specific roles to play in survival. Some people were responsible for maintaining the fires, others for preparing food, and others for maintaining and repairing shelters and clothing. Knowing that everyone was working together toward the same goal of survival made the impossible seem possible. So the next time you're shivering in your heated house because the thermostat is set to 68 instead of 72, remember that your ancestors survived nights so cold that exposed skin would freeze solid in minutes. And they didn't just survive, they built families, raised children, created art, and lived full lives in conditions that would terrify modern humans. They were the ultimate survivors, armed with nothing but their intelligence, their toughness, and their absolute determination to live another day. And thanks to their incredible resilience and clever survival strategies, you're here today to complain about your heating bill. Want to discover more about what our ancestors lived and what they did? From hunting techniques to survival strategies, there's so much more to explore about how our ancestors survived and thrived. Subscribe to the Stone Age channel for more fascinating stories from the Stone Age.